Good afternoon. I would like to extend a warm welcome to everyone joining us for today's Bussola Institute webinar on the subject of Euro-Gulf Regional Cybersecurity Collaboration. As those of you who regularly attend our events will be aware, Bussola's work focuses on areas where there is significant potential for better understanding and greater cooperation between Europe and the Gulf. Cybersecurity is one of those areas that has become increasingly important over recent years and has taken on even more significance in our lives, particularly during the pandemic. The growing benefits of technology to society are enormous, with new digital capabilities continuing to transform everything from our health services, education, and transport to how we communicate with each other on a societal and on an individual basis. But this reliance on cyberspace brings with it inherent risks. In Europe and in the Gulf, the enormous progress of our digital societies also increases our cyber vulnerability. Cyber attacks from state and non-state sources pose serious potential risks, not only to critical national infrastructure like electricity supply, banking, and health systems, but also to public confidence in the security of our digital lives. If citizens and businesses feel that their digital environment is unsafe, our continued prosperity and social cohesion will also be at risk. For these reasons, the adoption of robust and comprehensive cybersecurity structures is critical to having thriving digital economies that will command public confidence. If we've learned anything from the COVID-19 pandemic, it is that, like several other challenges, cybersecurity threats are global and require a high degree of inter-regional and international cooperation if they are to be tackled effectively. The Gulf, and in particular the UAE, continues to be a world leader in advanced technological development and cybersecurity capability. The EU also has developed and put in place a leading-edge cybersecurity strategy aimed at building resilience to cyber threats and ensuring that citizens and businesses can continue to benefit from trustworthy digital technologies. Clearly, an enormous potential exists for further developing collaboration between both regions on this vital issue. Effective cybersecurity collaboration will not only serve to protect vital national infrastructure, but it will also protect our shared values, our continued prosperity, and our social cohesion in the cyber domain where we now talk, work, shop, and communicate. The Bussola Institute is delighted to have commissioned Professor Ernesto Damiani to prepare a research report which looks specifically at cybersecurity collaboration models in the EU and the Gulf region. And before I introduce Professor Ernesto, I just wish to acknowledge that all of our distinguished panelists today come to us with vast experience and enormous expertise. And each one of them has a hugely impressive curriculum vitae. So I am only proposing to highlight a few of their very many achievements as I introduce each panelist. So to begin with, we'll begin with Professor Ernesto, who is a Senior Director of the Robotics and Intelligent Systems Institute and Director of the Center for Cyber Physical Systems at Khalifa University, Abu Dhabi. He is also Professor at the University of Milan and is leader of the Big Data area at the Etisalat British Telecom Innovation Centre. He is president of the Consortium of Italian Computer Science Universities, and in addition, he's also a member of the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity Ad Hoc Working Group. Professor Damiani, we are most grateful to you for the work you have done on this paper for us, and we look forward very much to publishing it after this webinar. So maybe I'll start with a question, Professor Ernesto. In your paper, you have explored how national cybersecurity efforts are closely intertwined with regional cybersecurity capability. In this context, in your view, how are the Gulf states proceeding currently in developing regional capacity? Professor Ernesto.
Yeah, he was muted. So
yeah.
First of all, thank you very much. It's really a great honor to be here and to sort of go through a couple of ideas of the paper in front of this distinguished audience, those panelists. I really look forward to their feedback. But question, what I tried to do and what I'm trying to do in this study is to, first of all, I distinguish between two categories. One category is the one of cybersecurity capacity, and the other one is cybersecurity posture. And in both cases, you may need collaboration to achieve them both. But building cybersecurity capabilities and cybersecurity capacity is a long-term process. It involves, for example, as in the academia, it involves a number of stakeholders. Building a cybersecurity posture may be something that you have to do fast, depending on the circumstances. It requires a vertical initiative. Also, in this case, we need collaboration. So I started looking at these two categories, and I took a closer look at how the thing emerged in Europe. In Europe, there is a very complex network. And if you look at, I'm not a social scientist, but I tried to use network theory a bit to look at the network of collaboration that you have within Europe on the topics of building cybersecurity capacity and on the topic of correct posture, in which, of course, you enter the collaboration with NATO, collaborations with other bodies. And you find that it's actually, if you look at it topologically, it's a little bit like a sort of multiplex. A lot of organizations are members of a lot of things, and then those things are themselves members of other things. And if you look at the complexity of the links that you have in the European cybersecurity collaboration structure, you will find that it is actually more a multiplex than a graph. So, and I have this direct experience myself. For example, the consortium I lead in Italy is a group and is a member of other groups. For example, is a member of XO is a member of other organizations. Now in the Gulf, and this has created, I would like to say, a community of people who basically take place with multiple hats to a number of this type of collaboration. And this happens every day, right? And I think the panelists can relate to that in our experience. In the Gulf, there is a growing network of collaborations. I would say that is more like a graph in which the bilateral links are set up one by one, and normally the type of collaboration is well identified and on a specific topic. I don't know if the Gulf will evolve towards a multiplex or not. And what I was trying to make the point is that to build capabilities, the multiplex structure has been strong in the experience of Europe has shown it. To build the posture, I defer to Professor Ben Israel. Maybe building posture fast, correct posture fast is another story. And so what is I believe the Gulf is progressing towards a more complex, multipolar type of interaction. And I hope Dr. Mohammed will be able to comment on that. And but of course there is I will finish with this remark. Also, there is the notion that the type of collaboration that you need for building capacity and the type of collaboration that you need for achieving quickly a correct posture in certain circumstances may be different ones. And I think that in the paper I try to sort of highlight this difference in the type of collaboration that is needed and on the consequences. So I hope I answered your question. These are two different graphs for the moment. They both are graphs, and they may converge to some sort of a common structure. I hope that this panel can shed some light on these next steps for this type of international collaboration.
Great, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. And when I come on to the other speakers, just maybe one other question before we move on, and then I'll come back to you later again, Professor Ernesto. It is clear from what you've said there that cybersecurity is both a short-term and a long-term priority. But it appears to me, as somebody who's not expert in this area, that the bad actors, if we can call them that, are always a step or two ahead of security measures, or they appear to us anyway to be. In your view, what can we do anything to get ahead of them, or will cybersecurity always be just either responsive or reactive?
Well, I think that in order to get to, but on this again, I defer to the panelists, but to the other panelists we may know better. But my personal idea is that we needed to increase the speed of the reaction, the speed of the interaction, how the information travels in the network of the good guys. And this is the type of collaboration. Unfortunately, the collaborative structures do exist in the bad guys arena as well. Collaborative structure emerged, and with Dr. Mohammed, for example, we had longer, we go way back in discussing this type of structure. I still remember some masterly remarks that he made on this. Their collaboration do emerge quickly because they are led by, well, certain type of purposes. I think we need to match at least partially the speed of the reaction of the information transfer if we wanted to be able to be proactive, or at least to be able to react promptly to the threat.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. And I'll move on at this stage to His Excellency, Dr. Mohammed AlKuwaiti. And Dr. Mohammed is the head of cybersecurity of the Government of the United Arab Emirates and managing director of the National Data Center under the Supreme Council for National Security. He's also assistant professor of the Homeland Security Program at Rabdan Academy. And in addition, he is a visiting lecturer on cybersecurity at a number of universities, including Khalifa University, where Professor Ernesto works, and the National Defense College in Abu Dhabi. Dr. Mohammed has published numerous studies and has lectured extensively at conferences across the world. It's a wonderful pleasure to have you with us today, Dr. Mohammed. And it's a real honor to have you. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us. And maybe to begin with, you can react a little bit in your answer as well to one or two of the issues raised by Professor Ernesto. But maybe to begin with, if I could focus a question to you, in your view, what is the role of governments in enhancing cybersecurity? And how do you view progress in the Gulf in furthering comprehensive cybersecurity through government and society?
Allow me first to thank you all for hosting myself with all of those distinguished guests and honorable professors. So thank you very much for being here. Yes, it is an important topic, as you mentioned, John, and it is actually touching about not only the national security, but also the lifestyle and the shared values that we have, from prosperities to cultures to many of the things that is actually impacting us. And this is the essence of that collaboration. We need to touch upon those values. And this is where the roles of government does not stop only on spreading the awareness, for example, or maybe on defending or building a national cybersecurity center that is actually will use the NIST model from protecting to detecting to recovering to responding to many of those aspects, but also outreach to education, outreach to small and medium businesses that's needed to be actually building the whole ecosystem. And this is what some of the examples we have in the region, for example, with Israel, where we saw all of that ecosystem is actually all working together in this aspects. And this is what we are trying to, and already starting actually building in the UAE. UAE is going through a whole digital transformation and actually continuing to be the leading of many of those countries in the region, and to shift towards an AI, artificial intelligent government. And that's the vision that's set up from the leadership. And this is what we are actually trying to do with all of the help of our partners, with all of the help of those companies, small, medium businesses, anybody in that aspects. So with that, the roles of the government is extended not only on the technology and people and processes, but also reaches to people. And this is what's actually we're trying to do many of those collaboration with academia, with the small and medium businesses and really building that ecosystem together in order to go and reach to that culture of cybersecurity resiliency. And this is what you mentioned there as well, John. The resiliency is the goal, the ultimate goal that we are trying to actually really raise the public confidence and thriving towards really building that heavenly cyber environment allows everybody to actually do that. So how we do reach that? Definitely bilateral relationship is always a quick, faster in this, but the essence is to go towards that multilateral relationship and allow all of these collisions as well as all of these alliances for all of the like-minded nations to really build and even raise the confidence of that. Confidence building, capacity building measures, many of those things that we are already actually participating in and building with our friendships in the European Union, for example. And many of the NATO nations is actually not only doing a cyber exercises that allows us to actually proactively prepare for such incidents if it comes to that level, but also to help in many of the training aspects that allows us as well to raise the preparations of many of those aspects. So it is an important aspects that we need to actually build on. And Professor actually Ernesto touched upon an important point, which is information sharing and collaboration of this. And the essence of this, as we always speak, and the professor knows many of this, it's the transparency. Yes, it is an information sharing. Yes, it's a collaboration, but the essence of that is the transparency of such information sharing. Will you give me the whole list of attacks that's happening today, the IOCs, the TTPs, the things that is we needed in order to really build at least an attribution indicators of who is doing what. I'm not referring here to the international laws of armed conflicts and the sanctions or things that need to be applied. I'm sure this will come in the discussions, but this is again different measures that will dictate and will come towards us when the time is right. But now building that information sharing and collaboration is what we see an important aspects, not only for us, but for all of our friendly partners that we are actually working with them. So that's my overview on this, and definitely will continue towards that.
Great, and I will come back to you later, Dr. Mohammed, on information sharing. But for now, I just want to touch on something that you said at the outset in relation to the UAE digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and so on. The UAE, and I know this from personal experience, having worked in UAE for almost 5 years, but UAE is generally regarded as excelling in e-government. And what challenges are faced in balancing, if you like, openness and access to government services and cybersecurity, and particularly trust in using e-government services? Is that an issue, for example?
That's an important question, and definitely from your experience here, you saw some of those challenges that we've been through. The good thing is the vision is one. The good thing is there is a clear map, a clear direction, as well as governance that help in doing this directions. So the policies and the laws that comes always try to strike a balance between many of those, let's call it government services or government information, as well as data, and compared to the privacy of the small and medium businesses and the flexibility of many of the ability of doing such businesses in an easy to act modes. Yes, there is always a challenge towards that. The thing that helped us in this is, again, back to that transparency. If many of those entities, governments, they really realize the importance of this information sharing, the importance of really joining together towards that clear goal and vision, they all will happen. They will all come and really participate and even contribute towards this transformation. E-government, already UAE, if you know, long time ago, based on Majlis. Majlis, where people used to actually sit together with the leaders, with the prime ministers, and many of those. So the direction came after that to move towards something called buildings and government facilities. After that, these government facilities start connecting each other. And this is what created what you referred to, John, e-government, where all of those governments are connected together in such e-government aspects. The government later on, and that was towards 2007, 2008. And then they moved towards something called smart government in 2012, where everything needs to be smart. And this is where we helped actually in not only interconnecting, but also information sharing across all of those entities. And in 2017, the direction came, let's move towards AI government, which is allow everybody to do. And the good thing, the pandemic maybe accelerated some of this to us all, moved us in a faster pace, and allows everybody to realize that the future is towards that e-government, towards many of those virtualized type of us. We're doing our meeting here in a very flexible and a very way clear and great way on that. So this is where we're heading. And yes, the challenge is always there. With the determination, with the collaboration, with this, it will always happen. And this is a good example if we take it now towards the other international collaboration. It's the same building stones, it's the same building measures. Yes, there is the hesitancies in specifically the sovereignties of each nation, the sovereignties of data, the sovereignties of many of those. But again, with that transparency, definitely everything togetherness, we can do it.
Great. And we'll come back indeed to chat about that as well, if we have enough time. Thank you so much. And I'll come back to you in a few minutes. Our next panelist is Professor Roberto Baldoni. And last month, Professor Baldoni was appointed by the Italian Prime Minister as the first Director General of the National Cybersecurity Agency of Italy. So to begin with, our warmest congratulations and every good wish for the future, Professor Roberto, and that very, very important task and in your new role. Since January 2018, Professor Baldoni has been Deputy Director General of the Department of Information for Security, in charge of the development of national cybersecurity architecture and of the mitigation of cyber attacks impacting national security. He is also a full professor of computer science at the University of Rome La Sapienza. Professor Baldoni, again, my congrats. And can you please tell us a little about the newly established National Security Agency of Italy?
Thank you, John, for the invitation, and thank you for organizing this. This is actually the first panel that I'm doing outside Italy, so I'm very happy about that, because I took the new position September 1st, and now we are in a big storm of activities for creating this new agency actually from scratch. So we are building all the administrative machine. At the same time, we are supporting the services that the agency is expected to erogate, starting from the CSERT, and other certification authorities that we already include. The new agency that was approved by the government in the first days of August will be the certification authority, the cybersecurity authority of Italy. So in that respect, it will include all the tasks related to incident response, prevention, but we also include the education, the technology development part, being actually the national competence center that will be connected to the European one that has been established recently in Bucharest, and all the activities related to the dissemination of the culture of cybersecurity. In order to do that, we actually did an exercise that is very complex doing in Italy. So we took competencies and tasks that before were assigned to other ministries and other authorities. So everyone in Italy did a step back in order to create an agency that could have all the, let's say, segments of cybersecurity into the hands, in order to create as fast as we can an important defense for the ICT asset of Italy. Again, it's not only incident response, it's development of new technology, it's prevention through certification. So actually an holistic activity that go in the direction of protecting our country. For numbers, by the end of the year, we will be 100. By the end of 2023, we will reach 300 people, and by 2027, 800 people, up to 1,000. So it sounds like a great and exciting adventure. Of course, is a big opportunity for the country to create a giant of such dimensions. So it's a huge work. If there is something that I want to highlight is that the agency will work in order to play a pivotal role between public and private, let's say, organization. For a very simple reason, we cannot think about cybersecurity only from a government or a public administration perspective. Internet is done by devices that are produced by private organization. Services are supplied through private organizations. So this is something that we have to play together, and this will be one of the main target, creating this close environment, public-private in Italy, of the agency. So this is actually, I mean, the numbers. These are the numbers, the timeline, and the functions that we have. Again, big challenge, big effort. I really hope to, to come here maybe in a couple of years and explaining what we did and the result that we achieved. I am quite optimistic. I mean, we did a lot of stuff in the last 4 years when I was at DIS that did an excellent job for creating the national cybersecurity architecture. And thanks to this, we were able to build the new agency.
Great. Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, and the very, very best of luck. Just want you just very briefly to, I'm very sure it's high in your agenda, and that's a point raised by Dr. Mohammed on the importance of information sharing across regions, within a country, across regions, and indeed across the globe. How big a priority will that be for you and for Italy in your new role?
Absolutely top priority. I mean, you raise a question before how we could avoid that attackers be 2 or 3 steps ahead of the defenders. And I think that one of the important things that we have to improve in order to be very close, not ahead, but very close to the attackers is the information sharing. And despite the declaration that sometimes are done by politicians or politics, or that there is not the let's say the right degree of information sharing that we should have. So I think that this will be one of the top priority for the new agency, try to boost the information sharing with other countries. This is something that has been done in the past in Italy. We signed a few agreements with other countries. I think that we have to really have a boost to this activity in order to to have better information, more accurate information, in order to alarm the right organization at the right moment. Because if we will be able to do that and to activate this positive loop, I am sure that the impact of the attack could be much less intense.
Great.
So if I can comment on something else that has been discussed before by Professor Damiani, I think that that they show all this graph in the work that he did. I think that the graph is not expanding at the same pace of the attackers. What do I mean with that? I think that the graph is not impacting the society too much. All the nodes in that plot are mainly experts that talk each other, while we have important part of the society that are outside of this transitive closure, mathematically speaking. So the basic idea is that we have to do our best in order to include everyone in a context of culture of society. We recently had a big incident that impacted the vaccination strategy of the government in Italy, and this happened for one vulnerability coming from an employee of this organization. So this is something really that has to be spread as a culture in order that we will be able to set up the right defense.
Sure. That's great. Thank you so much for that. Our next panelist is Professor Gabriela Drorodosek, and Professor Gabriela is the Executive Director of the Research Institute Code. She is the chair of the Communication System and Network Security at the Bundeswehr University Munich, and she is the coordinator of the EU H2020 Project Concordia. Professor Gabriela holds several supervisory and advisory mandates in industry, and she's a member of the Scientific Board of the National Cybersecurity Council and a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on Cybersecurity. Professor Gabriela, you're most welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. To stay with cooperation and information sharing and the importance of all of this, looking at the value of cooperation and information sharing in cybersecurity, what value are we seeing, for example, from your experience in a regional EU approach when cybersecurity is primarily organized at a national level by countries themselves?
Thanks again for inviting me to the panel. As a coordinator of Concordia, we see that cooperation is key. So yes, therefore, we are developing a cyber threat intelligence for Europe, which means for several sectors, not just for the telco sector, but also for the finance and insurance sector, where we see how we can build a platform with the telco and with the researchers to exchange indicators of compromise, but also more added value between the stakeholders. And of course, trust is here essential. and of course, keeping the pace or the requirements with respect to, for example, the data does not leave a specific institution like the banks. So investing or developing federated machine learning approaches. So development of such information sharing is absolutely key for, as you said before, defense attacker race. I would even go there in some extending in terms of we need to change the paradigm. We need to build systems like with moving target defense, where we make it really hard for attackers to see what attack surface we have. We need to change the attack surface. So moving target defense, zero touch management, SDN technology, all this and AI-based service defense, which is absolutely the key for further improvement, is something we had to deal. Mm-hmm. So not just try to exchange data, which is important, but also develop new paradigms in terms of being in front of the attacker. And so we see, for example, Concordia, the project with over 55 partners, over 20 countries. What we are doing, we are building European secure, resilient, and trusted ecosystem, where we are building services, service boards, for example, for research, bring researchers and industry together to build and to develop, to bring, for example, education, building an educational ecosystem. For example, bringing startups to the investment companies together to really build the ecosystem, and of course, supporting also the establishment of the network of the national cybersecurity centers, which are built in all member states, and of course, the cooperation or the link to the Bucharest European Cybersecurity Center. So all these parts are the idea how we can really structure, build the service board, the services, how to structure the cybersecurity community, and to bring all stakeholders together to really innovate, develop, and build a more robust and resilient and trustworthy ecosystem where we can also, where we all need. And cybersecurity, I think we agree all, cybersecurity and trust is the basis of our digital society.
Thank you so much. And as looking beyond Europe, looking to the Gulf, looking to the wider world, how are you interacting with, we'll say, other regions, other countries through Concordia?
We have such stakeholder groups where we develop and exchange ideas. What Concordia is building is a blueprint. Yes. It's a blueprint, best practices, how we can really structure and build the cybersecurity community. It's time for Europe, but it can be taken also for other parts of the world and see what ideas, what best practices, what developments it can be taken out of it after Concordia ends to really build something sustainable in terms of developing, and not only research, but also industry together, bringing and building in terms more, as the goal of Concordia is the European secure, resilient, and trusted ecosystem.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Professor Gabriele. And now come to our next panelist, Major General Professor Isaac Ben Israel, who holds numerous positions across the government and public sector of Israel. He's the co-director of the National Artificial Intelligence Task Force, founder and head of the Blavatnik Interdisciplinary Cyber Research Center, and of the Yuval Ne'eman Workshop for Science, Technology and Security. Professor Isaac is chairman of the Israeli Space Agency, and in 2010, he was appointed by the Prime Minister to lead the national task force that formulated Israel's cybersecurity policy. And his recommendations ultimately led to the creation of the National Cybersecurity Bureau in the Prime Minister's office in Israel. You're most welcome, Professor Isaac. It's great to see you. And continuing on with the theme of information sharing, collaboration, and in wider ways even than information sharing, I would see from the discussion to date that we've had collaboration and knowledge sharing as essential dimensions for bringing about global cybersecurity. Yet, not everyone within or between states and societies is willing to share information and expertise. Over time, this will not all be done tomorrow, but over time, how can we build trust in developing cross-national cybersecurity capabilities?
Thank you for inviting me here, and hello to everyone. Well, information sharing is something that is absolutely necessary if we want to secure our digital communication, and almost everything that was mentioned here is based on some digital way of communicating. Even this online seminar now is part of it. Information sharing is essential, still very difficult to be done. And I have a lot of doubts about it, not only because human beings, I mean, there was Francis Bacon already said some almost 600 years ago that knowledge is power, and this is part of human nature, and people will not give knowledge or information, which is part of it, easily. There are more problems here than this, and this is because cybersecurity technology is a dual-use technology. I mean, you can use it both ways. And although it's very easy to say, okay, we are dealing only with security, not with offensive applications of the technology, still the technology is a dual-use technology. And people are very sensitive about information sharing. I'm speaking now about cybersecurity because of that reason. So, although I agree almost to everything that was written in the paper of Ernesto, still I would, as a practical advice, I would say, although it's not as good as having large or community of states, a large group of states that will cooperate, we still, I think, have to begin with bilateral agreements exactly because of this point, information sharing and confidence building and all the terms that were mentioned by Dr. AlKuwaiti, they are all easier, I wouldn't say easy, but easier when you speak between two partners and more than a group of lot of other countries.
Thank you very much indeed. Just to maybe look at something different relating to Israel, what in your view are the key ingredients to Israel's success in developing national cybersecurity strategies and capabilities as an integral part of its economic development?
I think the elements were mentioned almost by everyone here.
Yeah.
But the only difference is that we started doing it many years ago. Yeah. This is the main difference. And Israel is small enough, this is an advantage in this case, that once you have a coherent program, you can quite quickly can have all the stakeholders cooperating in it because it's a small country. The elements are very simple. First of all, you should address the whole ecosystem. It's not technology by itself. It's not education by itself. It's not startup culture or startup industry, seed industries that we have in Israel. You need all of them, and the government, by the way, had to do only two things. This is my opinion. One is to enable this, to encourage all these relation buildings, etc. And the second one is about defense, securing the assets, cyber assets of the whole of the country. I'm not speaking about military or something like this. We started doing it in 2002. I met Professor Baldoni a few years ago, and I'm glad that now he has a full agency under him. But we started building an agency like this in 2002. This is now 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of these 20 years, we find ourselves in terms of sales economy, I don't know, supplying something like 20%, like 10% of the global market for defensive cyber measures, or in terms of investment, which is more interesting when we speak with professors and universities. In terms of investments, something like 1/3 of the business sector cyber investment globally goes to Israel. It's all because of this ecosystem. I think we all understand it. The problem is how you really create it. This is the problem.
Great. Thank you so much. I go back to you, Professor Ernesto, and I'm going just something we spoke about earlier this morning, COVID. COVID dominates, I won't say everything in our lives at the moment, but certainly for the past 18 months or so, it has, and will continue to do so to a lesser or greater extent for a while. And in your view, has the COVID pandemic made us more aware of cybersecurity and maybe also made it more difficult to instill a culture of cybersecurity across society?
This is a question that I think has been asked several times in the past few months, and I would like to stress that it has changed a lot because it has moved away from, well, you know, our comfort zone, the places where we could do security by design, and it has moved away a lot of activities that involve exchanging information, that just moved them somewhere else. It has moved them on the platforms that were available. It was moved them, and we had to privilege connectivity and continuing operation. So in a sense, being able to carry on the business, even in the pandemic situation, we had to privilege that over security. This is something against everything we preach, right? We preach never to do a technological move before having sorted out what could be the consequences, but we had to do it. And the problem is that now a lot of this situation is not going to be back to normal, switch back. So we have a situation in which a lot of the operational processes, which are vital processes, and we were discussing the booking of vaccination, this is just one, there are many others, have been moved to platforms that have been created ad hoc and that use infrastructures, the ones that we had available. So now the notion is that this situation is not going to go back to normal in a week. And I think that there is a big need for us to intervene in such a way that we can limit the dangers. This is what I was referring to, the posture problem. There are moments in which you change your position in terms of the technology you're using, and you need to adapt your posture. For that, bilateral collaboration may be the only way. We need to know how to do it. We need to exchange information on how to do it. And this has to be done fast. Then, of course, we also need to continue and accelerate the effort for information sharing, for building joint capability, for growing all together in cybersecurity, region-wide. And that one need a complex graph, might be. But the complex graph has the problem that its topology is also, there is an inertia in changing the topology of the graph. So I think that we need to go in the two directions, and the COVID is an accelerator in both. So this is my short answer.
Thank you so much. I'll come back to you, Dr. Mohammed, and with something that's a major challenge for every country. It was for the country I come from, Ireland, when our health service executive was hit very hard by a cyber security problem, a cyber attack. Cyber attacks often travel through a number of different locations, and sometimes it's difficult to pin down the source. You know this far better than I do. How has the UAE been cooperating with others around the world in combating cyber attacks, maybe through support, information sharing, whatever, and maybe as an example for other countries?
So again, it's a very important question here, and you mentioned a near and dear incident that is actually touched upon us all, which is the ransomware that affected the health service there and caused the loss of life, actually, in that perspective. So definitely working together with entities in order to lower or even eliminate such aspects is very, very important. And the only way to do that, specifically because such attacks crosses and travel across many nations in that perspective, is using the information sharing principles, is using all of the efforts of those nations to actually collaborate and work together. So with that, the UAE, as well as many other nations, they have the CERT teams, the Computer Emergency Response Team, that is basically an initial entity who is responsible for awareness as well as spreading many advisories across those nations and sharing the information whenever such attacks happen. Yes, there is another channels which is more about the intelligence sharing, which is more about some of other entities who actually takes that towards that when a state or non-state actors actually as well touch upon that cyber attacks. But in general, the Computer Emergency Response Team definitely share information, work together, and help in order to deter or even investigate or at least allocate or prevent such of those attacks. Our goal is definitely the prevention. Our goal is the deterrence of many of those attacks, but that's an ultimate goal that will never happen without the collaboration of everybody in those nations. Were we successful in such attacks? Yes, in part of it, we been successful in eliminating as well as investigating the source of some of those attacks. The important piece of information here, as you all know as well, is the collaboration of the private sector, because they're the one who owns the infrastructure in some of those entities. They're the one who owns the source of many of those attacks. And it's not only the government, but also those entities who really need to help us and collaborate with us. Now, given the fact that many data laws are controlling many of this information, for example, GDPR, or even the cross-border protection laws, or even the Cloud Act in the US, and many of those aspects, definitely sometimes our hands are tied towards this. We cannot do anything and just waiting for their information in order to start some of this investigation, or basically to investigate some of these aspects. So definitely the governance and the information sharing of that is a very important piece there. It's important to bring, actually, one story comes to my mind. I always mention this, a very good example and successful story where we had an attack from a friendly nation, our allied, and all of these attacks, with all of the information sharing we gave, with all of the IOCs, indicator of compromise we gave, we still been seeing this attack happen again and again and again. So one day we called the guys and we told them, guys, this is not working. We've been actually giving you this information for more than 6 months. The attack is still happening. Please help us understand. They themselves, they didn't know how to tackle this problem, because again, it's a developed nation. They don't have all of the visibility of their network themselves. They don't have the capabilities and even the tools to do many of this investigation. And this is where we offered as well mutually to really help them in that, go there and help and detect and investigate and do many of this. And they really welcomed that. We even went and helped and found that source of attack that is actually was impacting themselves,
yes,
and at the same time impacting us here and other nations, as a matter of fact. And this was really a very good successful story where together their success is our success, is other nations' success, and this is how we really tackled that. So this is always really shows you the importance and the essence of this collaboration. Maybe definitely nations would love to help, but sorry, they don't have those capacities and means to do that. So that's just an important story came to me, I wanted to share it with the.
It is a very important one, and it is really well worth sharing. Thank you so much. We're beginning, unfortunately, to run out of time, and I know that Professor Roberto should have gone from us about 3 minutes ago. So I just want, Professor Roberto, before you go, to thank you so much and to wish you every success, and we'll keep in touch. And hopefully we'll all get together again in the not too distant future. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all you guys, and hope to meet you physically soon. Bye.
Great. Thanks a lot. Now, just to round off, because I like to end on the hour so that people know where they stand and they can, all of you have busy diaries. I'm just proposing to ask one final question of everybody. And I would like a concise answer because we just want to get everybody in. And it's arising from the discussion we had today, and of course, from your own experience and expertise. Why is it now more important than ever for Europe and the Gulf, and indeed beyond, to cooperate more closely on cybersecurity? And from your perspective, and this is the important bit, what is the most urgent priority that should be addressed as part of this collaboration? And we will try to put a set of recommendations together in Bussola, and we'll share them with you. So if you wouldn't mind, we'll start with maybe Professor Gabriella. We'll start with you and we'll go round the table, as it were.
Okay, thanks again. Yeah, I think the most important part, why do we need to collaborate? Because the attack surface is increasingly and dramatically increasing. And we see cyber attacks, AI-based, that we cannot handle if we are think just isolated, either national, technological, or whatever. And in the paper, Ernesto, who is also partner or member of the Concordia project, definitely say that we need a holistic approach, as also Isaac said. Not just technology, but take also education, economics, society. It's also the point of society, how to bring all dimensions together in terms of cooperation. And what is necessary, this is what the goal of Concordia is: build European secure, resilient, and trusted ecosystem. Well, replace European with the world, and then I think we will be all more safe. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Professor Isaac.
Well, computer technology is the dominant technology of our time. This is obvious. And therefore, we will be in the future more dependent on computers, which means we will create, we don't want it, but we will create more opportunities for bad guys to harm the society. I mean, we develop computer technology for the sake of society, but we help them in doing it. And therefore, cybersecurity is going to be more important next year than it is today. And as it's now more important than it was 10 years ago. And therefore, I would add the word, by the way, Dr. Mohammed AlKuwaiti, I would add the word AI to everything, secure to everything you say. Secure the AI, secure the transformation, digital transformation, etc. The point we have to understand is it's not about technology. It's an interdisciplinary problem, very complex world, and therefore we need to deal with all aspects, including legal aspects, psychology of individuals, psychology of the society. It's interdisciplinary. This is what we have to do now.
Thank you so much. Dr. Mohammed.
I would second Professor Isaac as well as Professor Gabriel in that perspective. Definitely attacks increasing, technology increasing, dependency increasing. And I would add only adversaries are as well using that and communicating with each other and leveraging this more than us and doing all of this, as you mentioned, sir, faster and even with no boundaries. We still wait until we have a secure communication channel to communicate. We are still until we have a way of so let's do it. Let's execute it. Let's actually share many of this information and let's have some international laws that actually governs many of those aspects, a deterrence policy or something that allows all of the efforts that we've been building, all of our digital economy, all of our companies, things that we actually built and helped in many of those aspects cannot go just by a simple ransomware attack with someone behind the money. There need to be a real 1,000 thought before someone can do such attack. And this will only comes through, as again, an international collaboration and governance or a deterrence type of policy. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And we'll end where we started with Professor Ernesto. So maybe your view on this, and then I just want to say a few words to summarize.
Okay, I just try to make it very short. First of all, the attack surface is expanding. Everybody said it. The bad guys are becoming better and better. They're becoming better at their job, and they are organizing themselves fast. The techniques that we see in the field right now and show that this is happening. And this may depend independently from who the bad guys are. I don't want to enter into that, but they are organizing. And I think that we should respond quickly. So quick response, bilateral collaboration, come to help each other, create the avenues where we can exchange information bilaterally and build maybe the specialist capability quickly. And then the big graph. So sorry, I have to go back to my paper. The holistic view of Concordia. I want to acknowledge that because it's very important. This is something we have discussed so many times in the project. The big graph is another thing and shouldn't be confused with the quick bilateral operational activity. It is a collective responsibility that we need to make. And now, let me go back with that of the professor. Academia needs to play a very important role in this big graph because it needs to be there in all sorts of communications to oil and to provide the background for it.
Thank you so much. And thanks to all of you. I am enormously grateful to each one of you for bringing your considerable experience and expertise to this, what I regard as a very important Bussola webinar. In itself, in my view, today is a microcosm of what Europe and the Gulf could potentially achieve in coming together on this critical security issue that affects every aspect of our lives. Bussola's work has continued to highlight the shared values and mutual interests that serve to demonstrate the value of closer cooperation between Europe and the Gulf and the rest of the world. In relation to Europe and the Gulf, both regions are leaders in digital development and have already their own unifying frameworks for cyber defense. But in an increasingly interconnected world, to be effective, like-minded nations and regions across the world need to coordinate action through broader partnerships that can provide a balance of protections for privacy, security, economic development, and ultimately our way of life. And it is clear from the stimulating contributions which we've just heard that any multilateral actions across the globe that will enhance our ability to share information and act in a coordinated manner will certainly change the cyber playing field from one dominated by offensive-minded opponents to one which is based on mutually assured defenses. Let's hope it does. Finally, I offer my sincerest thanks to our many, many guests for joining us and for attending the webinar today. And we look forward to seeing you all soon again. And as always, I'm hugely grateful to all of my colleagues at Bussola for their ongoing commitment and support. Thank you all very, very much again. It's been a pleasure to listen to all of you today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much to everyone for joining us.